Hello, I'm attorney Dan Marr. I've been practicing law in the state of New Hampshire for about close to 40 years, 39 years, and in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 29 years. And during that period of time, I've dealt with a lot of people that are, or entities that are dividing up their assets. And I'm going to be talking today about dividing up your assets when the relationship ends. This could be a relationship that's romantic, that's unmarried couple. It could be a business partnership, but there's both a dividing of real estate and personal property that we're going to be talking about today. So basically, in the first instance in New Hampshire, we have, if there's real estate, meaning dirt with bricks and mortars, in that situation, there's a partition action and there's a process upon which you can actually go to court and have the court determine. It could be the probate court or the superior court determine who owns what portion of the property and have an order of buying out the other portion of the property. Generally, what the courts will do is they'll make a determination, even if the deeds say 50-50, undivided half interest, they'll look at the process and they'll actually go through that and see, well, who really put up the money for the property? Did somebody put some sweat equity into the property? Did somebody um, sell their own house to buy this house or this business property if they did this? That works very well when there's two individuals in a situation. And in that situation, the courts will actually make the determination in that as to who contributed more. Generally, my experience, and I've dealt with these cases quite a bit, if there's somebody that's saying, well, look, I was contributing my share of the mortgage, and it'll say $1,000 a month, and you're living in a 3-bedroom house, and the other person is contributing, so therefore I'd be able to get more, even though the other person contributed, I say, $100,000 in the first instance to the property, and then the two of you guys have been paying $1,000 a month for the mortgage on the property. The court may very well determine that other person that contributed $100,000 up front gets a larger percentage, because sometimes that $1,000 a month is living expense. It's your occupancy costs. And that's what I would argue when I'm arguing on the side. I would say you had to pay rent somewhere, and this is an occupancy cost for you. So yes, you are contributing, but you and your former romantic partner, or the two of you that were siblings that had the lake house together, or friends that had the lake house together, whatever it may be, in that situation, you were both contributing equally to that. And then there was what's outside of the equal contributions. So that's what the courts will deal with when you're individuals. Now you take that real estate and you think about it as you created a limited liability company. You wanted to hold the property, and it was an investment property, and you decided that you were going to do an Airbnb or rentals on the lake, short-term rentals on the lake, or even renting the property of a multifamily house. You and a partner decided to have several tenants, long-term tenants in the property, and you created a limited liability company. It's not as easy to partition that. You have to go to court and deal with the dividing up of that limited liability company, because the entity itself is the one who owns the property. There's only one owner of the property, and that's the limited liability company. And then the two owners, members, in an LLC, if it's a corporation, it's called shareholders. In those situations, they have to deal with the dissolution of that relationship. And they do that in court. We've dealt with that quite a bit in the court system. And there might be issues of offsets there, as well as one member saying that they contributed more, or maybe one member saying that the other one did something wrong. In those situations, they all get flushed out in the court proceedings in the Superior Court generally. So that happens. And again, if there's some issues as to unequal distributions, to those all get addressed as well. But for dividing up the property, you have to really deal with the dissolution of that entity, or somebody buying out the other person. Maybe one party is saying the other one froze out the other one. So all of those, and that's a legal term where, litigation term, where people are saying, you treated me like a somebody that didn't deserve to be an owner of the company. You kind of pushed me into the corner. That's freezing you out, and that can be happening. As to personal property, the trucks, the tractors, whatever it may be. If there's a certificate of title, obviously it's very important to make sure that you understand who has a certificate of title of the property of the trucks. or other things. But sometimes I've seen that while somebody else owns or has the piece of equipment, and they don't have it, it's not like a certificate title where they have the title in their own name, but it's at somebody's property. I do see a fair amount of situations where people will self-help, and they'll go in and they'll if they have the keys, they'll go and take the property in the middle of the night, take it away. If the other person held the property on their property, didn't have the right to it, say it was a limited liability company and they were the minority shareholder of the company, in that situation, they really don't have much to say in court to say, well, wait a minute here, I had the right to possess this property. And the police, after it's happened, are not going to get involved. The police hear somebody going into another person's property when the other one doesn't want them to be in there. Yes, they'll get involved with that, and they'll say, if you're breaching the peace, you're not allowed to come in here. You have to leave and get a court order. But sometimes they'll deal with that with their own self-help if they're not breaking anybody and they're not getting violence with anybody. So they'll take the stuff in the middle of the night. If they don't do that, there's a process called a replevin where you can go into court and actually deal with these issues as to who owns the property, who has the right to the property. And generally, if it's titled property, it's very easy who has certificate title of the property. And if it's an LLC and somebody's saying, well, wait a minute, I should be able to still use this and I'm a minority interest in the property, that doesn't hold well at all, because you don't have the right to own the LLC or use the LLC property if the LLC is no longer operating, or if you're no longer part of the LLC because you guys have had a falling out between the two of you. So all of those issues get worked out in the courts, but it matters as to who owns the property. Is it real estate? Is it personal property? Again, if it's an entity, then you have to deal with the dividing between the owners of the entity. You can't do a partition action. If it's two individuals, you can do a partition action for real estate. And then there's also processes to divide up personal property, even if you have individuals. I'm attorney Dan Marr. I've dealt with these issues for quite a few for decades, and I'm happy to help if the opportunity arises. I'm at 603-883-5501, 603-883-5501. And for my weekly vlogs, you can go on to our website, NashvilleLaw.com. That's NashvilleLaw, one word, .com. And then check on my personal blogs for attorney Dan Marr, and you'll see my YouTube vlogs all identified by title. Look forward to working with you if the opportunity arises. Thank you.